Today, we're diving into some pretty mind-bending source material. It's a radical theory about your identity, one that involves secret IRS files, a kind of legal double called a straw man, and the absolutely wild claim that the government sees you in a way you would never, ever expect. So, let's get into it. All right, so where does this all start? It kicks off with a really provocative claim that the IRS has a secret, coded file on every single citizen. Think of it like a digital dossier, one that the source says holds information that goes way beyond just your tax records. That obviously begs the question, if this file is real, what could possibly be in it? And maybe more importantly, why would it have to be a secret in the first place? Well, according to the source, this file is called the Individual Master File, or IMF for short. And the theory goes that it's not just a file, it's a code that, with the right keys, like IRS Manual 6209, can be cracked open to reveal a hidden truth about your legal status. And this is where we get to the real heart of the matter, the core concept of this entire theory, something called the straw man. The source material is very clear that if you don't grasp this idea, the rest of it just won't make sense. Okay, so what in the world is a straw man, according to this theory? Let's break it down. Well, the source goes straight to the books, specifically Black's Law Dictionary. It defines a straw man as a kind of front, a third party that's created in name only, just to be part of a transaction, like a stand-in or a placeholder. The documents conclude that it's, in essence, a legal fiction. Now, that phrase, legal fiction, is super important here. The whole theory really hinges on this idea. So let's see how the source defines that term. Again, pointing to a law dictionary, the source says a legal fiction is something that doesn't actually exist, but the law pretends it's real, supposedly to achieve justice. And this raises a question right at the center of the theory. How can justice really be based on a pretense? Okay, so we've got all this abstract legal theory, right? But how does it connect to something you can actually hold in your hand? Well, the source uses a notice of federal tax lien as its first major piece of evidence to bridge that gap. The source tells us to ignore the big numbers for a second and zoom in on one specific little column, type of tax. According to this theory, this tiny box is the smoking gun. And this is what the document says, word for word, that if you look at these notices, the type of tax is often listed as just 1040. Now, I know what you're thinking, and what most people would think. A 1040 is just the income tax form, right? The one millions of us fill out every single year. Well, according to this theory, that's where we're all wrong. Dead wrong. And here's the proof they offer. They say forget about the Form 1040 and instead look at the U.S. Code, Title 26, Section 1040. The text here is all about the executor of the estate of any decedent. So the argument is that 1040 on a tax lien isn't about an income tax form. It's about a tax code related to estates. And right here, this is where the whole thing takes a really sharp and pretty shocking turn. This connection is used by the source to argue that, for tax purposes, living, breathing citizens are treated as if they're legally dead. So, how do they connect those dots? The source lays out this trail of breadcrumbs, a chain of codes. It supposedly starts with code 582 on that secret IMF file. That code is said to be a 2032A indicator, which in turn points to the tax that's described in Section 2001. It's the specific chain of codes that's crucial to the argument. And that trail leads us right here, to the actual text of Title 26, Section 2001. It says, "A tax is hereby imposed on the transfer of the taxable estate of every decedent who is a citizen." Now pay very close attention to that grammar. You see it? The entire argument boils down to that one tiny two-letter word, is, not was. The source argues that using the present tense, is a citizen, means the law is talking about a decedent who is, well, currently a citizen. The jaw-dropping implication? That living citizens are being legally classified as decedents. Okay, let's just follow that logic for a second. If you're legally dead for tax purposes, then who's running the show? Who's in charge of your affairs? The source claims that you, without even knowing it, have become the executor for your own estate. And they point to this specific bit of tax code to back it up. It basically says an executor can be anyone who's holding the decedent's property if there isn't a formally appointed one. And since you're in possession of your own stuff, the argument is that you automatically fill that role by default.
So after laying out this really complex and frankly disturbing problem, the documents then shift gears. They actually propose a solution, a step-by-step process they claim will let you take back control of this whole situation.
Step 1, they say, is to get an employer identification number, an EIN. But not just any EIN. The instructions are super specific. You have to select estate as the entity type. Then, and this is the key part, you enter your own name in all caps as the deceased, which represents the straw man, and then you enter your normal regular case name as the executor.
All right, step 2. This involves setting up a whole new legal entity to manage that estate. The guide tells you to apply for another EIN, but this time for a trust. You're supposed to identify yourself, your regular case name, as the responsible party, and you're given a very specific name for the trust, your own name followed by Estate Living Trust. So we've walked through this incredibly detailed, almost maze-like theory, from secret files and legal doubles to obscure tax codes. And it all leaves us with this one big, kind of philosophical question that's really at the heart of the whole thing. What's the real difference between you, the living, breathing person, and your name, the ink on the paper?